Hey, it's your boy, Sergeant Hooked Intentions. So today we're doing something a little different. So the Star Wars video I've been trying to get out for a while. I know these and the Marvel ones don't perform as well as my Toku videos, but that's okay. So today, I know I already gushed and gushed and gushed about KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, an awesome game. But I also want to kind of gush about the sequel, and I've been struggling what to call this series. Um, and I got to figure that out. So it might just be a why I love blah. Um, but yeah, this is all going to be about why I love KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords. Um, it's interesting with this game because when it came out, um, I wasn't so sure about it. I knew how the first game ended. I had played through it and everything, and I was like, how are they going to follow that up? And when details came out that it wasn't going to be any of the same cast, it wasn't going to be the characters, are going to be completely new and everything. I was like, I don't know. And I just kind of lost interest a little bit and didn't really do much with it. Well, recently I had gotten a tick to random tick that I wanted to replay the first game, and I was like, you know what, I should play two as well. And so I looked into it and I got two going, and I played the version with the Sith Lords Restored content mod put into it, and let me tell you, it's pretty great. Like, I will say this: KOTOR 2 cannot and will not be or beat, I guess you could say. Whoops! Holy cow, phone! What are you trying to do? You trying to leave this phone? Goodness. Um, it will never be or beat the first game. It just won't. It just won't. The first one was a landmark in terms of its story structure, in terms of its gameplay, how those two flowed into each other, being set within the Star Wars universe, an original story set in it that was technically a prequel to even the prequels. It was fire in a barrel. It was a boom, powder keg type thing that just nobody expected to blow up like it did. It became a system seller for the Xbox, among many other games, and just in general was really great. And two is also really, really good, and I think a lot of people kind of slept on it a little bit because of its initial uh, format it came out in, form that it came out in development wise. A lot of people don't know it had kind of a hellish development cycle. I don't know if Matt McMuscles or anybody else has done anything like Matt McMuscles did that series called What Happened, about like different games and development cycles and things that happened. But they had a pretty rocky development cycle. The first game had a like 5 year development cycle. The second game, barely a year and a half, maybe two. They were rushed by Microsoft. So if you didn't know, 2 is not actually created by BioWare. BioWare had moved on to do some other IPs. They did Jade Empire. They were working on getting things together to eventually do Dragon Age. And they were not a big part of 2, other than giving what assets they had and their engine and stuff over to Obsidian Entertainment. That's who took over for 2. And this kind of caught a lot of people off guard, and that's what started kind of the anti-hype train for the game a little bit for people, is that it wasn't even the same developer, which can make sense and can be like something that you can kind of get behind or understand with certain games that come out. But with this, Obsidian had already proved themselves with other games and stuff like that. So I didn't understand why people were all of a sudden like hateful towards a group that they had never actually seen a Star Wars game come from before. I thought that was kind of odd. But yeah, essentially Microsoft wanted, them big bucks, the big money, and so they, pushed them to get it out as fast as possible. And that's why the game in its base state feels incomplete. There's dialogue pieces that are gone. There are story elements that aren't well explained. There's not a lot of like, you know, inter squad, squad mates, banter and stuff like that, unless you're on the Ebon Hawk. Whereas the Sith Lords Restored content mod completely changes that. Now, I will say also, I'll be completely upfront, I've never played just base vanilla KOTOR 2. I'm basing this entirely off of how I felt playing the Sith Lords Restored content mod on the PC. I also know that it is available on the Switch. They just released KOTOR and KOTOR 2 on the Switch, and I believe the Sith Lords Restored content mod, I believe, is part of that as well, coming up as an update or something like that. Maybe it's already released. That was a cool thing too with the Sith Lords Restored content mod, is that this was literally, again, it's a cool story of like people taking it into their own hands to figure out what was left behind. They get into the code, they figure out the files are there, and they put it back in. They were so like well loved for this that the developers, Obsidian themselves, literally gave out the source code for the game for them to be able to do it, and for everybody to be able to do whatever they want with the game years later, which I think is really cool. I think that's a really awesome thing that they allowed that. But it had a pretty hellish development cycle, very rushed development cycle, because Microsoft wanted money, 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 money. And so they pushed it, pushed it, pushed it to come out as fast as possible, and that's why we got what we got with the original game, in its original form, anyway. But it's got a really cool setup. It still is somewhat connected to the first game. You play as the Exile, who is a Jedi that worked with Revan, and in doing so, eventually kind of felt remorseful for their actions and left Revan and what he was doing, went back and told the Jedi Council, who then you think the whole time that they exiled you, and they really kind of didn't. More of it, spoiler story wise, is that you kind of did it yourself. Your kind of connection to the Force was a little bit severed over your like what you did, and you're in exile at the beginning of the game. You're known as the Exile. That's your character, and you're along the way picking up these party members, right? In the first game, it's like, oh, you got Mission and Zalbar and all these different people that are joining you, Canderous and blah blah blah, HK-47, and it's all cool, right? And there's some Jedi, but they're already Jedi when they join you and whatever. There's an entire mechanic of this game that to this day when I started playing it, I had no clue was in there. There's this whole influence system in the game where the more that you talk to people and the more that you make certain decisions in dialogue and throughout the game, the more you start to kind of persuade and kind of form and change some of the characters. What usually ends up happening, and a good example of this is Etten, is like in the case of Etten, he's kind of like your roguish Han Solo type character, one of the first characters you meet in this like prison place that you're at, basically this mining facility place, and he ends up joining you, and one of the first planets you go to, they mentioned that when you landed, he just by basically muscle memory by defense already went into like a fighting stance, a Connie soldier fighting stance that only soldiers are supposed to be taught. And so that gives the spark to start talking to him about his past. The more you talk to him, you find out he knew a Jedi, and this Jedi and him kind of formed sort of a relationship. He almost felt like he had feelings for her or whatever. And he was scared because he always felt like it was possible he was Force sensitive. He always was able to, like, any emotion he was feeling, lash that out and, like, affect others with it, which is a sign of Force sensitivity. And so this Jedi ends up basically sacrificing herself for him. And so he kind of, in a similar way to the Exile, kind of cut himself off from all of that and didn't want to accept that. Well, the more that you talk to him, you have the option of basically bringing that more out into the forefront, talking to him about it, and if you say the right things to him, you can train him to be a Jedi. So this entire time, the whole point of the game is you're finding these like members of the Jedi Order to bring them back together, because by the time of the second game, the Jedi Order has basically been destroyed by the Sith. They were very much so winning this war, even though the Jedi and the Republic won the first game. So we're building the Jedi Order in terms of getting these Jedi Council members back and whatever, but then you're also like subtly like helping along these Force sensitive people to become Jedi. And I think that's a really cool part of it that I didn't know existed, and that's why I like the game so much. I never knew that was part of it. I remember playing it recently when I did play through over the beginning of the summer, and I was like, "What? Huh? I can make them Jedi? All these different characters? He can become a Jedi." And spoilers for this, of course, for a nearly 13-year-old game, but whatever. He can become a Jedi. Mira can become a Jedi. Baldur, like so many of the characters can just straight become Jedi with you, and you can train them, and they can learn different Force powers and attacks and stuff like that. And it's really cool. Or they can fall on the dark side if that's what you want to do as well. But I think that's a really cool part of it. And I think that's what is kind of this game's like hook that is as shocking as the Revan hook was with the first game, was that they didn't really market on that much. They didn't really tell you that that was a thing, and it's not until you get to the game a little bit that you start figuring that out. The Sith Lord's Restored Content mod makes a lot more use of this and has a lot more opportunities for the dialogue to happen, for other pieces that weren't heard in the original game to come out, things like that. And so it's really cool that you're just on this journey as you're going along and gaining experience and talking to your teammates and everything. They're eventually learning that some of them are Force sensitive. Not all of them, like 3 or 4 people, I think 5-ish or so out of all the party members you can gain. And it's really cool. It's a super cool mechanic that I never saw coming. And I think it's really cool that instead of being this just this exile character, you are the reason the Jedi Order is rebuilding itself. I think that's super cool in terms of Star Wars in general, that you're responsible for that. And if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, the Old Republic respects KOTOR 2 as a story, and members within this go on to basically form the new Jedi Council, and like their ancestors go on farther than them to like continue that. I think that's really cool. I believe in the Old Republic there's even an ancestor of Bastila that is like one of the main characters in the story. But again, completely blew my mind. I will say I called it with the villain Kreia. I mean, she was just a bitch from the beginning, so I'm like, clearly she's the bad guy, and she was. Interesting that she wasn't really a Jedi or Sith. She started out as a Jedi, became a Sith for a while, worked with Revan, decided, that's not really for me. And her enemy is like the Force itself. She wants to like wipe out the Force itself, which is really interesting to see a villain that's like pissed off at the Force rather than a person. And she was a decent villain, but I mean, you know, and her subordinates are okay. Darth Nihilus and some of the other ones that are in it are really cool. But that whole mechanic of the influence system just completely blew my mind. You can completely set them up with how many lightsabers you want them to have, what colors, you know, what type of, you know, build they go for, basically. It's so cool, and I really, really enjoy the game. And I really would honestly like urge people to try it out. I know it's an older game now, but really honestly urge people to try it out. Especially with the Sith Lords Restored content mod, both on Steam through PC, you know, PC through Steam, or I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and quote me and don't quote me if I might be wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is what I mean. I believe it was put up as an update for the release for the Switch as well. The Sith Lords Restored content mod makes it the game it should have been. So yeah, it's got a really good cast of characters. The dialogue is really good. I will say that I wish that the characters spoke up more on certain planets you bring them to. I think that was a little bit missing. And there wasn't quite as many interesting people to talk to on all the planets as there was in the first game. But overall, it's really good. The combat changes up. You have different lightsaber combat styles. You have like basically prestige classes you can get near the end of the game. And it's just a really well put together game that a lot of people slept on because it wasn't the first game, basically. Or, oh, well, it's doing this differently, so it must be bad. It's Obsidian and it's not BioWare. It probably isn't good. Well, give it a shot. You know, I know that's usually a fairly decent rule of thumb to go by with games, that, you know, you want to make sure that, you know, it's the developer who created that series that's still carrying it on because they know the series the best because they created it to begin with, you know. But I do think it's important to give things a chance as well, and especially something with Star Wars. I mean, look where we're at now with Star Wars. We have all the different shows: Obi-Wan, Mandalorian, Boba Fett. The Cassian Andor show is starting soon. The Ahsoka show is starting eventually. The movies, you know, that we've gotten clearly. The animated stuff, Clone Wars, Rebels. There's just so much Star Wars content now that you really gotta like give pretty much everything a shot to really have like a full, well-rounded experience. And there's so many different avenues to look at within Star Wars in terms of types of media, and this is one of the many that are really super interesting and well worth your time. Like I said, combat's really great, gameplay's really great, controls are really awesome. And the Sith Lords Restore content mod makes it what it should have been at release. So I would say overall, score-wise, if I was going to give it a score, I guess, I probably would give it somewhere around an 8.5 out of 10. Still a really awesome game, not nearly as like perfection worthy as as the first game, but still a really good game. And I think one that I think, like I said, a lot of people sleep on because it's not KOTOR 1, it's not BioWare, it's not this, it's not that. Well, what is it though? What is it? What are the things that it does do well? And look into it because of that. Is kind of how I look at it. So just a little video on that. I just really wanted to get this out. I know it's random right now, but I mean, it's in the midst of the Star Wars love, if you will, right now. Coming up on the channel, tonight when I'm recording this is superhero time, so look out for reviews for Down Brothers and Revice this week. We're getting near the end of both. Well, Revice anyway. And Geet starting up in September, so that's pretty awesome. And as far as life stuff, I'm starting a new job. Pretty excited about that. Much better pay and not retail, so woohoo. But let me know in the comments below if you guys played KOTOR 2. Have you not? If you have, what are your favorite memories from playing it? Things you liked about it, things you didn't like. What are some other Star Wars games? Let me know some other Star Wars games you think I should try out. I've played quite a few, but there might be some that I've never tried or never thought about trying. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think and what you guys think of the game and everything, and the anti-hype basically surrounding it in a way. But as always, stay hooked on them heroes and them henshins. I will talk to you later. Bye bye. Try KOTOR 2. It's pretty good.